Nigeria records 338 new cases of coronavirus, boosting the total to nearly 6,000. UK airline operator grounded in Nigeria for running commercial flights against its permit for humanitarian operations. In international news, European countries set to relax more COVID-19 restrictions. And in sport, Arsenal probes Lacazette over balloon incident. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has announced that the easing of the lockdown will last another 2 weeks. The task force president says during the extended period there will be stricter enforcement and persuasion measures. Nigeria's coronavirus record continues to mount after the Nigeria Center for Disease Control confirmed 338 new cases on Sunday, bringing the total to 5,959. This is the highest number the country has recorded since the pandemic began. Lagos, the nation's epicenter, recorded 177 of those new cases. Kano followed at a distance with 64 new cases. The Federal Capital Territory was even more distant at 21. 15 other states also recorded new cases, and nearly 1,600 patients have been discharged, while 182 have died. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu says he's encouraged by the levels of compliance with the terms of the eased lockdown among open markets and non-food markets, but he's not pleased with the non-compliance with the use of face masks and disobeying health directives by yellow bells or downfall operators. The governor expressed the sentiments at a media briefing on Sunday, where he also disclosed that his administration was reviewing the phased lockdown relaxation to find a way to reopen more businesses. He sounded the warning that he would review the terms of the eased lockdown since the Gaussians continue to disobey guidelines. Nearly 2,000 Lagosians have stepped into trouble and have been arrested in the last 2 weeks for disregarding the coronavirus lockdown order. In a statement on Sunday, Police Public Relations Officer DSP Bala Elkanah said the command's legal team had charged the suspects to the mobile court at the state's Criminal Investigation Department in Yaba. 1,833 accused persons were convicted after they pleaded guilty to the charges. The 39 persons who pleaded not guilty were held in police custody as the case was adjourned. The police spokesperson said nearly 500 vehicles, 85 of which were commercial automobiles, were impounded during the exercise. Elkanah also said more than 700 commercial motorcycles were impounded. They were cited for violating the governor's order that suspended their operations. And more than 70 tricycles were also impounded for violating the curfew. The violence that erupted in the Lamod local government area of Adamawa State on Thursday has prompted the state government to impose a 24-hour curfew on the warring communities. A statement signed by Governor Amadu Fintiri's press secretary, Humjwashi Wosonuku, said the communities involved were Tigno Duse, Sabunlayi, and Bagajish. He said the governor finds the breach of peace unacceptable and that security agencies will be out to enforce the curfew. Governor Fintiri has visited the area on Friday evening, but the Hausa and Chobo people were reported to have continued attacks on each other after the governor left. It has been reported that violence continued when police and military personnel were present shifted attention. As a result, scores among the warring people were reported to have died by Sunday, while dozens more were wounded. 1 year ago, the International Monetary Fund advised Nigeria to remove oil subsidies. It's been a year, and oil prices have gone to the dumps, and storage is full of oil the country can't sell. The country has now has not decided to do just that, remove oil subsidies. What a difference a year makes. Reporter Deji Badwas has the story.
The move to scrap fuel subsidies is a big gamble by the government, but one it is hoping might work out eventually without any blowback. Experts though say the policy is fundamentally flawed and could be defeated if the government doesn't embark on full deregulation of the country's downstream petroleum sector.
This is the most auspicious time for the government to deregulate, because if they deregulate, the price of petroleum products or price of PMS, that is premium motor spirit, will come below what it is today. And when international prices begin to go up, the citizens will realize that this is a deregulated product and the government does not need to fix the price. And so if they have to pay more to buy fuel at the pump head, they will accept it. But if that does not happen until the price of crude start to go up again, the government will find it difficult to remove the subsidy, or will find it difficult to deregulate.
There are three components to fuel subsidy. There is the under recovery, which is what I think they have removed. There's another component to do with FX subsidy, because they get foreign exchange at a lower rate than you would get in the exporter and investors window. And then there's a third component to do with taxes. So taxes such as VAT, by law, are applicable on petrol and other petroleum products, but they haven't been charged. They've been suspended for years. That's also a form of subsidy. Before you start adjusting the price of pump price to something else, you need to make sure that all those free subsidies are removed. And if you do that, that can easily add about 2 trillion to government revenue.
Indeed, completely removing the subsidy would save the country billions of dollars it could put to better use elsewhere in the economy. A petrol subsidy is a very sensitive political issue in Africa's largest oil producer.
If you deregulate that downstream today, in less than 2 years, the price of petrol can go as high as 500 naira per liter. But if we were to be refining locally, if prices of crude oil go up, that quantity we have that we will refine locally, we will sell them here and make good money. Then the other one we export, we make good money.
So far, there hasn't been any complaint about the new policy of the government from the usual quarters, the labor unions. And part of that could be because the current price of petrol is lower than what it was selling before. But things may change when the global price of crude rebounds, as that would certainly push domestic petrol prices up. So it's actually still early days to tell if the government has really done away with the country's controversial subsidy for good.
Minister of Aviation Hadi Sirika says the country's aviation authority has seized an aircraft belonging to an aviation company registered in the United Kingdom for running commercial flight services under the guise of humanitarian operation. The minister said in a tweet on Sunday, the company Flyer Aviation, registered in the United Kingdom and approved for humanitarian operations, was caught conducting commercial flights.
Up African news, COVID-19 medical waste becoming a public health risk in Tunisia. And later, international news, European countries set to relax more COVID-19 restrictions.
You are watching ANN.
Hey, tell them. They told me you are the best around here.
What can I do for you, sir?
I want my own very, very simple. I don't want any shine. If I see any shine.
Actually, I'd love some sequins on my skirt. And I don't like any frills. I beg, I want frills on mine. But it must not be too tight.
Tight! That tight now, that is what I want. And the transition.
Oh, you know what? I want a gown.
Me too. I want to come to one.
You know what GMS and this for coming? Hey, did you capture all the information?
Of course not.
Actually.
Fantastic.
I give my customers what they love because everyone has their unique style. So why should they wear the same thing? Just like MTN for me, which gives unique data and recharge offers just the way you like it. Just dial *121# and turn up great offers every day.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Uganda launched a fundraising drive last month to support government efforts to fight the coronavirus pandemic in the country. Now the fund is appealing for more contributions from citizens and corporate bodies.
equipping Minister of Health will ease response in the fight against coronavirus pandemic. The National COVID-19 Task Fund wants 100 vehicles procured to help in the transportation of medical personnel and supplies, especially in up-country districts.
We need to remember that we don't have a cure for this virus, and we're going to have to learn to live with it for the foreseeable future. So vehicles are very, very critical in the fight against this pandemic.
The fund has also received a request to put up strong structures to accommodate the truck drivers from neighboring countries.
The future for commuters, both in public transport, like a Kamba bus and any other such big coaches, as well as individuals, because we need to remember that we don't have a cure for.
The team is appealing to every Ugandan to come forward and contribute to this cause. They also dismiss reports of a mandatory contribution of 10,000 shillings by every employee. They also appeal to donors and the diaspora to save 5% from the remittance to support the country's effort in the campaign against coronavirus.
Appealing to the mass market now, we're appealing to the 1.5 million formally employed workers through their CEOs to donate about 10,000 shillings for the month of May or the month of June. And we hope that the company can match that 10,000 shilling donation from each of these employees. We think that could raise us 30 billion shillings. So 15 billion would come directly by 10,000 donation from each employee of the 1.5 million that we're targeting. And if the companies were so gracious enough to match, that would get us another 15 billion to get to 30 billion.
The fund management says it appreciates every person who has contributed to fight against coronavirus and promised to put the money to proper use. It is now about 2 months since President Museveni issued a lockdown directive. While all the patients have been discharged, cases of corona keep increasing as a result of truck drivers entering the country on a daily basis. Mutonyi.
South African businesses have ventured into a new territory as the first virtual shareholder meeting took place. These meetings involve exciting new growth opportunities. Companies all over the world are now making electronic annual general meeting process a regular feature of public company AGMs. Angela Coppola reports from Johannesburg.
Some of South Africa's best-known blue chips will be using virtual platforms for their annual general meetings. Many of these platforms allow for moderation of questions before they are submitted to the board. Shareholder activists say that this is contrary to the provisions of the Companies Act and creates the potential for abuse of these systems to avoid accountability and infringe shareholder rights.
What our Companies Act also says very clearly is that if a company is going to have a virtual-only AGM, that's fine, as long as it doesn't inhibit shareholder participation in that AGM. And it's even more specific than that. It says that participants must be able to communicate with each other concurrently without an intermediary. Those are the words of the Act.
Others suggest there's a difference between an intermediary and a moderator.
If the role of the moderator is to take questions, only questions that the board would like to hear, and don't take questions that the board makes the board uncomfortable, I think that that would certainly be wrong. So I don't think that necessarily the fact that it goes through a moderator would be in breach of the Companies Act.
The online solution to allowing everyone to participate in these AGMs is cumbersome but transparent.
Everybody's online, everyone can see everyone else or hear everyone else. And you raise your hand when you want to ask a question, and there's a queue and a list, and you listen to the question and you answer it in real time.
It's a saving grace of business and certainly professional services all over the world that people are able to do these things virtually. So to me, it's a positive development that companies are able to do that, but that should not take away from the responsibility of the company and the board to engage with their shareholders responsibly and proactively.
Company board members have the same responsibilities to their shareholders in the online and physical environments.
Again, it's all about power dynamics, and the virtual AGM gives companies a very, very powerful role in shutting things down that they don't want to be heard.
The pandemic now means that attendance at annual general meetings can happen online, but it has to be done carefully, and everyone has to get an opportunity to ask questions.
COVID-19 in Tunisia has led medical establishments to generate more medical waste than the country is used to producing. Now the waste is becoming a health risk to the nation. Abney Chawochi reports from Tunis.
Across Tunisia, there are 43 state-sponsored quarantine centers, as well as dozens of hospitals and several referral laboratories. Garbage contaminated with bodily fluids or other infectious materials is becoming a serious concern for public health facilities as they brace for a surge in the number of quarantined individuals and COVID-19 patients.
The national strategy put in place to fight the coronavirus pandemic and stop the infections is multidimensional and multi-axis. The main danger is the management of tons of contaminated waste at health facilities. The strategy was enacted as early as February.
In addition to thousands of frontline healthcare workers fighting COVID-19, National Waste Management Agency and National Environmental Protection Agency workers are also tackling the virus.
The National Environmental Protection Agency sends control missions to healthcare facilities, hospitals, recycling units and quarantine centers in order to make sure that safety measures are respected. This high-risk operation requires a considerable effort to guarantee the safety of all stakeholders.
Medical Waste Solutions is one of the private partners of the state. The company is in charge of transporting, disinfecting and decontaminating tons of garbage. The process is extremely complicated, but people here have been trained to deal with hazardous waste in a professional manner.
Treating hazardous medical waste is a complicated operation. The garbage is first transported carefully to this recycling factory, then disinfected with water vapor at 121 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. COVID-19 and quarantine waste is treated twice to make sure the virus is neutralized.
Despite efforts by the Tunisian government to ensure proper handling of medical waste, it has become usual to see discarded face masks in the streets or in the wild. Environmentalists have raised concern about this alarming problem. Medical supplies and disposable personal protective equipment like face masks and protective gear pile up as medical waste that needs to be safely discarded. The Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Health have put in place a strict sanitary protocol to guarantee the safety of their personnel.
When we return, international news. European countries set to relax more COVID-19 restrictions. And later, sport. Arsenal probes Lacazette over balloon incidents.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you'll need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, Africa News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Many European countries, including Italy and Spain, are now on the verge of opening up their economies and further easing lockdown restrictions. Most businesses in Italy, including bars and hairdressers, will be free to reopen effective today. Most European countries have now been on total lockdown for more than 2 months. Italy and Spain say they have both recorded very low death toll cases in the past few days. The daily death toll in Spain has fallen below 100 for the first time since it imposed lockdown restrictions. But health officials are warning of a likely second wave of infections. Catholic churches have started preparing for the resumption of Mass with emphasis on social distancing and wearing of face masks. Other faiths will also be allowed to hold religious services. In Spain, only 10 persons are allowed to gather together but must wear face masks and observe social distancing. Cinemas, museums and theatres are also opening at reduced capacity. Restrictions are still in place in most parts of Barcelona and Madrid. Primary and secondary schools in Belgium will also start reopening under strict conditions effective Monday. The famous Acropolis reopened in Greece and secondary school pupils are returning to class. Portugal has also announced restaurants, cafes and pastry shops can reopen. Canada has continued to report a surge in the country's COVID-19 cases. It's confirmed more than 1,000 new coronavirus cases and 103 deaths on Sunday. These new figures bring the total death toll to just fewer than 6,000. Ontario and Quebec remain the hardest hit of all provinces. Canada now has a total of just under 77,000 coronavirus cases. Quebec also reported 737 new cases and 79 deaths on Sunday. More than 11,000 persons have recovered in Quebec. Ontario reported 23 new deaths and 340 new cases, bringing the provincial figures up to more than 22,000 cases and 1,800 deaths. Japan, the world's third biggest economy, has fallen into recession for the first time in 5 years amid the coronavirus pandemic. Despite not going into full national lockdown, Japan issued a state of emergency in April, which severely affected supply chains and businesses. Consumers in Japan have been hit by the dual impact of the coronavirus and a sales tax hike of 2% in October. The country has lifted the state of emergency in 39 out of its 47 prefectures. But the economic outlook for this current quarter is still gloomy. The Japanese government has announced a record $1 trillion stimulus package, and the Bank of Japan extended its stimulus measures for the second straight month in April. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has pledged a second budget to fund fresh spending measures to cushion the economic blow of the pandemic. The Iranian government has warned the U.S. government against disrupting its fuel shipments to Venezuela. The country says it has received information that 4 U.S. Navy warships are in the Caribbean for a confrontation with Iran's tankers. Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif says 5 Iranian-flagged tankers loaded with tens of millions of dollars worth of fuel are heading towards Venezuela. Zarif warned against America's deployment of its navy to the Caribbean to intervene and create disruption. The foreign minister disclosed this in a letter to the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Iran says such U.S. action could be illegal and tantamount to a form of piracy. Zarif says the U.S. should be prepared for its consequences. The U.S. has imposed unilateral sanctions aimed at ending oil exports by Iran and Venezuela, both major crude oil producers. A new government to be led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his rival Benny Gantz has been sworn in Israel. This power-sharing deal ends the longest political crisis in the country. Israel has been on autopilot for more than 500 days without a stable government. It also held 3 inconclusive elections. This new government has been put in place to address the economic challenges caused by the coronavirus pandemic and the battle over Israel's possible annexation of large parts of the occupied West Bank. Under the power-sharing agreement, Netanyahu will serve 18 months as prime minister and then hand over to Gantz. Palestinian leaders have threatened to abolish bilateral agreements with Israel if it goes ahead with a plan to annex parts of the West Bank.
Up next, sport. Arsenal probes Lacazette over balloon incident. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit. Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. Arsenal is currently investigating striker Alexander Lacazette after a video emerged of him online inhaling gas from a balloon. Arsenal says this is a very serious matter which will be handled internally. The incident comes after Arsenal players were warned 2 years ago to stop inhaling gas from balloons believed to be nitrous oxide or laughing gas. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte says he needs more assurances before he can give a go-ahead for the resumption of Serie A. All clubs have suggested June the 13th for the championship to restart, while group training will get underway on Monday. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a pleasant evening.